You know what usually gives people away? Officer Ryan Cole called out as he stepped from his patrol SUV. The ones pretending to belong always look nervous. The quiet suburban street seemed to hold its breath. Lawn sprinklers clicked rhythmically across neatly trimmed yards. An American flag fluttered lazily from a white porch 2 houses down. The afternoon sun hung low over Maple Ridge Estates, casting long shadows across polished driveways and freshly cut grass. In the middle of it all, a black man stood beside an aging dark blue Mustang, a garden hose in one hand and a sponge in the other. He looked up calmly. Water dripped from the chrome bumper and pooled along the curb. He didn't answer right away. Ryan adjusted the body camera clipped to his uniform and took a few steps closer. The man seemed completely unbothered, which somehow irritated him even more. Most people became defensive when approached by law enforcement. Most people started explaining themselves before a question was even asked. This man simply returned the sponge to a bucket filled with soapy water and rested both hands lightly on the roof of the car. "Afternoon, officer," he said. His voice was steady, almost relaxed. Ryan glanced at the vehicle, then at the modest clothes the man wore. Faded jeans, work boots, a gray t-shirt darkened by water near the sleeves. Nothing about him matched the expensive neighborhood surrounding them. Across the street, a woman paused while walking her golden retriever. Another neighbor peeked through a front window. Ryan noticed neither. His attention remained fixed on the stranger. "Mind telling me who you are?" he asked. The man smiled politely. "Isaiah Bennett. You live here?" "Just moved in." Ryan looked toward the large corner house behind him. The property sat on nearly an acre of land, one of the most valuable lots in the development. Fresh moving boxes were still visible through the garage. Yet something about the scene didn't sit right with him. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was habit. Or maybe it was something he couldn't quite explain. "Interesting," Ryan said slowly. "Because we've had reports of suspicious activity around this neighborhood." Isaiah nodded once. "Have you?" The answer sounded sincere rather than sarcastic, which only made Ryan feel more unsettled. The hose continued running softly beside them, water winding through the gutter in shimmering ribbons of sunlight. Somewhere in the distance, a lawn mower hummed. Everything looked normal. Everything felt normal. Yet Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He stepped closer to the Mustang and examined the license plate. Isaiah watched without protest. No tension. No visible frustration. Just patience. The kind that made silence feel heavier. Ryan folded his arms. "I'm going to need to ask you a few questions." Isaiah looked toward the horizon where the sun glowed amber above the rooftops. Then he turned back and met the officer's eyes. "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need." Ryan didn't know it yet, but before the day was over, that simple answer would echo through the entire police department. Ryan Cole had always trusted first impressions. In 7 years wearing a badge, that habit had become second nature. Sometimes it helped him spot trouble before anyone else. Sometimes it earned praise from supervisors. At least that was what he liked to believe. Yet standing beside the curb that afternoon, watching Isaiah Bennett rinse soap from the hood of an old Mustang, he found himself searching for reasons that did not quite exist. Isaiah moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had done the same task hundreds of times. He folded a microfiber towel neatly over his shoulder and shut off the hose. The sudden silence seemed louder than the running water had been. "You said you just moved in?" Ryan asked. 3 days ago, Isaiah replied. He nodded toward the house. Still unpacking. Ryan looked at the property again. Large windows reflected the golden light of late afternoon. A moving truck had been parked there earlier in the week. Several neighbors had mentioned seeing workers carry furniture inside. Everything matched Isaiah's story. Even so, Ryan continued. "What brought you to town?" Isaiah smiled faintly. "Work." "What kind of work?" For a brief moment, Isaiah glanced toward the second floor of the house, where an unopened curtain shifted slightly in the breeze from an open window. "Public service," he answered. It was not really an answer, and Ryan knew it. Before he could ask another question, a woman approached from across the street, holding the leash of a golden retriever. "Everything all right here, officer?" she asked. "Just routine questions," Ryan replied. The woman smiled warmly at Isaiah. "Welcome to the neighborhood, by the way. I am Linda Parker. We met yesterday." Isaiah nodded politely. "Thank you. The cookies were excellent." Linda laughed. "My husband ate half of them before I could bring the plate home." As she continued her walk, Ryan noticed something he did not like. Isaiah already seemed comfortable here. Neighbors greeted him. People knew his name. Yet Ryan had never seen him before. The feeling settled deeper in his chest. Across town, inside the Maple Ridge Police Department, a very different conversation was taking place. Chief Harold Simmons stood at the front of a conference room reviewing a stack of personnel files. Around the table sat captains, lieutenants, and division supervisors. The atmosphere felt unusually tense. "We received confirmation this morning," Simmons said. "The state review team is moving forward." Several officers exchanged nervous glances. One lieutenant cleared his throat. "Do we know who they are sending?" Simmons shook his head. "No, only that the lead investigator will arrive sometime this week." The room grew quiet. Rumors had circulated for months. Complaints, audits, questions about missing evidence logs and irregular reports. Nothing proven, nothing public, but enough to place everyone on edge. Back on Maple Ridge Drive, Ryan's radio crackled softly. A dispatcher acknowledged routine traffic nearby. Isaiah listened without reaction. The sunlight caught tiny drops of water still clinging to the Mustang's side mirrors. "Nice car," Ryan finally said. "Thank you. Not many people keep one this old in this condition." Isaiah ran a cloth gently across the driver's side door. "Some things are worth taking care of." Ryan studied him carefully. The answer felt strangely deliberate, like it carried meaning beneath the surface. For the first time, he noticed Isaiah's eyes. Calm, observant, patient. They were the eyes of a man who seemed to know far more than he ever intended to say. And somehow, that unsettled Ryan more than anything else. The sun slipped lower behind the rows of maple trees, washing the neighborhood in a warm orange glow that made every window shine like polished copper. Ryan remained beside the driveway longer than necessary. He told himself he was being thorough, professional, careful, yet the truth was harder to admit. Something about Isaiah Bennett continued to bother him. It was not what the man said. It was what he did not say. Most people volunteered details. They filled silence with explanations. Isaiah seemed comfortable letting silence exist. That alone felt unusual. Ryan glanced toward the house once more. Several cardboard boxes were stacked inside the garage. A ladder leaned against the far wall. The scene looked exactly like that of a family settling into a new home. Even so, Ryan reached for his radio. "Dispatch, run a quick check for me." A few seconds later, the familiar voice of dispatcher Karen Mitchell crackled through the speaker. "Go ahead." Ryan read the license plate number from the Mustang. Karen acknowledged the request. As they waited, Isaiah continued drying the vehicle. The microfiber cloth moved across the paint in slow, careful strokes. Not rushed, not nervous, deliberate. Across town, tension continued building inside the police department. Chief Simmons stood near the conference room window overlooking the parking lot. Rain clouds had begun forming in the distance beyond the city skyline. One of the captains lowered his voice. "You really think the review team is coming this week?" Simmons nodded. "That is what I was told." Another supervisor leaned forward. "Do they know who is involved?" Simmons looked around the room. Nobody answered. Nobody wanted to answer. The chief folded his arms. Then perhaps everyone should focus on doing their jobs correctly. The meeting ended moments later. Chairs scraped across the floor. Conversations immediately became quieter, more cautious. Rumors had a way of changing behavior even before facts arrived. Back in Maple Ridge Estates, Karen's voice returned through Ryan's radio. "Vehicle registration is valid. Registered owner is Isaiah Bennett." Ryan frowned. "Any issues?" "None showing." Ryan thanked her and clipped the radio back onto his shoulder. That should have ended the matter. It did not. He noticed a black leather notebook resting on the passenger seat of the Mustang. The cover looked worn from years of use. A silver pin was clipped neatly along the edge. Strange detail, he thought. Isaiah did not seem like someone who forgot things. Every movement appeared intentional. Every object seemed exactly where it belonged. "You keep records?" Ryan asked casually, nodding toward the notebook. Isaiah followed his gaze. "Sometimes. Work-related? Mostly observations." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Observations about what?" A faint smile crossed Isaiah's face. "People." For the first time all afternoon, Ryan felt genuinely uncomfortable. The answer was simple. Harmless, even. Yet something about it lingered in the air. A breeze moved through the neighborhood, rustling leaves overhead. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime rang softly. Isaiah folded the drying cloth and placed it carefully inside a bucket. Then he looked directly at Ryan. Not with challenge, not with anger, simply with quiet attention. The kind that made a person wonder whether they were being studied far more closely than they realized. Ryan should have walked away. The registration was clean. The address matched. Nothing in dispatch suggested a problem. Yet the longer he stood there, the more determined he became to find something that justified his suspicion. The evening air had cooled slightly. Long shadows stretched across the pavement, and porch lights began flickering on one by one throughout the neighborhood. Isaiah lifted the bucket and carried it toward the garage. Ryan followed a few steps behind. "Mind if I ask a few more questions?" he said. Isaiah set the bucket down carefully. "You have already asked several." His tone remained polite. "And I appreciate your patience," Ryan replied. "But I would like to understand exactly what kind of public service you do." Isaiah looked at him for a moment before answering. "The kind that requires listening more than talking." Ryan frowned. That answer irritated him even more than the others. It felt evasive without technically refusing. He glanced inside the open garage. Stacked boxes lined one wall. Most were marked with simple black lettering. Kitchen, office, books. One larger box sat partially open near a workbench. Ryan noticed several neatly organized folders inside. Nothing unusual, yet he continued looking. Isaiah noticed. "Are you searching for something specific, Officer Cole?" Ryan shifted his weight. "Just making observations." A faint smile appeared on Isaiah's face. "Then we have something in common." The response landed harder than Ryan expected. Across the street, two neighbors had stopped to chat near a mailbox. Their occasional glances toward the driveway did not go unnoticed. Ryan suddenly became aware that this interaction had lasted much longer than a routine conversation should. His radio crackled again. Dispatch advised units about a minor traffic issue near downtown. Ryan acknowledged the transmission but remained where he was. Something inside him refused to let the matter go. "Can I see some identification?" he finally asked. Isaiah nodded without hesitation. He reached into his pocket and produced a wallet. The movement was calm and deliberate. He handed over a driver's license. Ryan examined it closely. The photo matched. The address matched. Everything matched. Still, his eyes paused on the name. Isaiah Bennett. The name felt strangely familiar. He could not place why. Not yet. He handed the license back. "Thank you." Isaiah returned it to his wallet. "Anything else?" The question sounded simple, but Ryan heard something beneath it. Not annoyance. Not fear. Something closer to curiosity. As though Isaiah was quietly measuring every decision Ryan made. A breeze drifted through the open garage, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass from a nearby yard. The neighborhood remained peaceful. Children rode bicycles at the far end of the street. A dog barked once and then fell silent. Everything about the scene suggested normalcy. Yet Ryan's instincts continued pulling him forward. "I think I may need to verify a few additional details," he said. Isaiah folded his arms loosely. "You are free to do your job." Ryan nodded. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Isaiah glanced toward the darkening sky, where storm clouds were beginning to gather beyond the horizon. "Just be certain," he said quietly, "that you are investigating facts and not assumptions." The words hung in the air long after the conversation ended, and for reasons Ryan could not explain, they followed him all the way back to his patrol vehicle. By the time Ryan pulled away from the curb, the first drops of rain had begun tapping softly against his windshield. He should have been heading back toward patrol. Instead, he found himself parked half a block away beneath a row of oak trees, staring through the windshield at Isaiah Bennett's house. The porch light had come on. Warm yellow light spilled across the front steps. Through a second-floor window, a silhouette moved briefly and disappeared. Ryan drummed his fingers against the steering wheel. Something was wrong. He could feel it. The problem was that every fact he had checked pointed in the opposite direction. His radio crackled. "Officer Cole, status check." Ryan grabbed the microphone. "Everything is fine." Yet even as he said the words, he was opening a database on the patrol computer. He typed Isaiah Bennett's name into the search field. The results appeared almost instantly. Valid driver's license. Clean record. Property ownership confirmed. No warrants. No alerts. Nothing suspicious. Ryan stared at the screen. Then he noticed something unusual. Several portions of the file were restricted. Access limited. He frowned. That was not normal. Most residents did not have restricted information attached to their records. He clicked again. Access denied. The message remained fixed on the screen. Rain rolled down the windshield in silver streams. Across town, Chief Simmons stood alone in his office. A sealed envelope rested on his desk. The state seal was stamped across the front. He had received it less than an hour earlier. Inside was confirmation that the special review team had already entered the city. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Simmons read the document twice. One sentence stood out more than all the others. The lead investigator's identity would remain confidential until formal introduction. Only state leadership possessed that information. Simmons exhaled slowly and looked out at the darkening parking lot below. Meanwhile, Ryan continued staring at the restricted file. Curiosity had become determination. Determination was slowly becoming obsession. He picked up his phone and called a friend in records. "Hey, Melissa. Quick question. Ever heard of Isaiah Bennett?" Silence lingered for a moment. "Where did you hear that name?" she asked. Ryan sat upright. "Why?" Another pause followed. "Forget I said anything. Melissa. Ryan, trust me. Drop it." The call ended. Ryan lowered the phone and stared at it. His pulse quickened. For the first time all evening, he felt certain there was something important hidden beneath the surface. Back at the house, Isaiah stepped onto the front porch carrying a mug of coffee. Rain drifted gently through the glow of the porch light. He stood there quietly, watching the storm move across the neighborhood. From a distance he appeared completely at peace. Unbothered. Unaware. Yet inside his jacket pocket rested a small notebook already filled with observations. One entry had been added only minutes earlier. It contained a single name, Officer Ryan Cole, and beneath it, only 4 carefully written words. Makes decisions too quickly. The rain continued through most of the night. By morning, Maple Ridge Estates looked washed clean. Water clung to tree branches like glass beads. Damp sidewalks reflected the pale gray sky. Isaiah Bennett sat alone on the covered porch with a notebook resting on one knee and a cup of black coffee cooling beside him. The neighborhood was quiet except for the distant sound of tires rolling across wet pavement. Every few minutes he would write a line, pause, then watch the street again. There was nothing hurried about him, nothing restless. The stillness seemed natural, as if he had learned long ago that silence revealed more than questions ever could. Across town, Ryan Cole had slept poorly. The restricted file, the strange reaction from Melissa, and the unanswered questions had followed him into the early morning hours. Now he sat inside his patrol vehicle outside a convenience store, staring at a cup of coffee he had barely touched. He replayed every moment from the previous afternoon, every answer Isaiah had given, every pause, every look. The more he thought about it, the less certain he felt. Yet uncertainty was not something Ryan handled well. He preferred clear categories, clear conclusions. People either belonged or they did not. They were trustworthy or suspicious, right or wrong. Isaiah Bennett did not fit neatly into any of those boxes. Back at the house, a delivery truck stopped at the curb. The driver stepped out carrying several sealed cartons. Isaiah thanked him warmly and signed for the shipment. The driver smiled before returning to the truck. It was a small interaction, barely 30 seconds long, yet it revealed something Ryan had failed to notice the day before. Everyone who spoke to Isaiah seemed immediately comfortable around him. The moving crew, the neighbors, the delivery driver. They relaxed in his presence. They listened when he spoke. Even from a distance, people appeared to trust him. The observation lingered in the back of Ryan's mind as he reviewed the previous day's body camera footage. During a break at the station, he watched portions of the interaction again. He expected to discover some hidden clue. Instead, he found himself noticing details he had missed before. Isaiah had never raised his voice, never challenged him, never shown him patience. In fact, every tense moment had been created by Ryan himself. The realization left a strange weight in his chest. Meanwhile, inside the police department, rumors intensified. Officers gathered in hallways speaking in lowered voices. Some believed the state investigator had already arrived. Others claimed the entire story was exaggerated. Nobody knew the truth. Yet anxiety moved through the building like an approaching storm. Near noon, Chief Simmons received another confidential call. He listened quietly, spoke only a few words, then ended the conversation. Afterward, he remained staring through his office window for nearly a full minute. Somewhere in the city, the person he was waiting for had already begun watching, already begun listening. already begun taking notes. And only one man in Maple Ridge had unknowingly introduced himself to that observer on the very first day. 3 weeks later, the atmosphere inside the Maple Ridge Police Department felt different. The nervous whispers were gone. The closed-door meetings had ended. Policies had been reviewed. Procedures had been corrected. And for the first time in a long while, people seemed less concerned with appearances and more concerned with accountability. Sunlight poured through the front windows of the station, painting long rectangles of gold across the polished floor. Officer Ryan Cole stood quietly near the lobby entrance holding a cardboard box filled with personal items from his desk. A framed photograph, a coffee mug, a notebook, nothing more. He had spent the past several weeks facing difficult conversations and even more difficult truths. The investigation had uncovered problems throughout the department, but the hardest thing Ryan had been forced to confront was himself. Not because someone humiliated him, not because someone sought revenge, but because someone had given him the opportunity to see what he had refused to see before. Outside, autumn had arrived. Leaves drifted across sidewalks in shades of amber and red. The air carried the scent of wood smoke and freshly cut grass. Ryan stepped into the parking lot and paused. Across the street sat a familiar dark blue Mustang. Water sparkled along its polished surface beneath the afternoon sun. Isaiah Bennett stood beside it with a garden hose in one hand and a microfiber towel draped over his shoulder. For a moment, Ryan simply watched. The scene looked almost identical to the first day they met. Same car, same calm expression, same quiet dignity. Yet everything felt different. Isaiah noticed him and offered a small nod. Ryan crossed the street slowly. Neither man spoke at first. The sound of water running across concrete filled the silence. A gentle breeze rustled the trees overhead. Finally, Ryan cleared his throat. "I owe you another apology." Isaiah shut off the hose and set it aside. "You already gave one." Ryan lowered his eyes briefly. "Not for everything." Isaiah studied him for a moment. Then he smiled faintly. Growth rarely happens in a single conversation. The words settled between them. Ryan looked at the Mustang. Tiny drops of water reflected the sunlight like scattered glass. "You knew who I was the moment we met, didn't you?" Isaiah nodded. "I did." Ryan let out a quiet breath. "And you still gave me a chance." Isaiah folded the towel carefully. Everyone deserves the opportunity to become better than their worst moment. Neither man spoke after that. There was nothing left to argue about. Nothing left to prove. The lesson had already been learned. Ryan reached for the hose lying near the driveway. Without being asked, he began helping rinse the remaining soap from the side of the car. Isaiah said nothing. He simply handed him the nozzle. Water flowed across the pavement in shimmering ribbons beneath the late afternoon sun. Across the street, children rode bicycles home for dinner. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Wind stirred the branches overhead. The neighborhood felt peaceful, ordinary, the way meaningful endings often do. And as the sunlight reflected across the polished surface of the Mustang, neither man seemed focused on rank, authority, or status anymore. One had learned that assumptions could blind a person. The other had proven that true strength did not come from power. It came from patience, integrity, and the willingness to extend grace when it was least expected. The water continued flowing quietly down the curb, carrying away the last traces of soap until only a clean reflection remained.